Marion, I love you. I love you. You the reason why so many black people, are able to retire successfully now. I love you. All that BS y'all talking about, he was smoking crack. I don't care. That's my mayor. The entire Washington, D.C. was smoking and cracking. Bugs. Hello there, Bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com. Today's accessory is the sequin turban. Ooh, I know you like, Nay, how you get it to be so puffy like that? Girl, my hair in a whole bush under here. Like I said, you got to maneuver this turban the way that you like to move it. Okay, so that it can fit your face. And if you are not already a part of our book club, please remember to hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's continue talking about brothers B.O. like George. Ain't that Funkin' kinda hard on you? The album that really upped the ante on the sampling question was Dr. Dre's The Chronic, which took over the world in 1992. Its biggest songs, its main singles, were powered by P-Funk. More specifically, they were fueled by a certain type of P-Funk sample. They differed by region. The East Coast had more interest in the early Funkadelic records. Rakim sampled No Head, No Backstage Pass. Did I know that song? I don't recall that song. I didn't think that the men got trifling until like now. I mean, if anybody could say it, that nigga could say it, okay? He could be like, okay, girl, if you want to get back here, you need to do something. Public Enemy sampled Undisco Kid, but East Coast producers cut and sliced and arranged while West Coast groups tended to take them wholesale. Dr. Dre went right for the biggest Parliament hits, the ones with the fat synthesizers and horn lines that could hold up an entire song. Let Me Ride took Mothership Connection almost wholesale. And in the video, there's even a scene of Dr. Dre being invited to a Parliament concert. I knew Dre all the way back from NWA. Though that was a group I wasn't sure about. They acted hard, but the ghetto out there is like our suburbs. I couldn't believe that the police went crazy when they said, fuck the police. That wouldn't have been a big deal back in New York. As it turned out, the controversy was the best thing that ever happened to them. I would concur. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm going to go to the left, and then I'm going to come back, okay? Let me tell you something. I don't know if NWA, you know what? NWA and Eazy-E and all them came out, I think, when I was in the 12th grade. You heard me? I had never heard anything like that before, okay? But I was feeling everything that they were saying. Living in DC in the 80s when Marion Barry was just grabbing dudes off the street and here, okay, I know you were just selling drugs, but I mean, do you want a gun? Marion Barry had just implemented a program. Marion Barry, I love you. I love you. You the reason why so many black people, are able to retire successfully now. I love you. Fuck all that BS y'all talking about. He was smoking crack. I don't care. That's my mayor. The entire Washington, D.C. was smoking the cracky. Marion Barry had just implemented this program or a cadet program that in the 12th grade, you were groomed to either be a DC firefighter or a DC police officer. On top of that, They were just picking up anybody. You heard me? These dudes were selling drugs on the street on Monday. Tuesday, they in the academy, okay? Thursday, they out on the street with guns, stealing the drugs from the people that they used to hang out with. I'm telling you, the 80s was something so crazy, and the early 90s was something so crazy, okay? It was like the Wild Wild West out there. For a song like After Police to come out, it was positive and powerful to us. So yeah, After Police, you know, it ended up, y'all know I ended up being a probation officer later on, but you know, that's not the point we trying to make. In the wake of the Chronic, other West Coast artists started to build their sound on our samples. Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style came out the next year. Warren G's Regulators the year after that. I did a duet with Ice Cube on his own version of Bop Gun, which was on his Lethal Injection album. That's how P-Funk fathered G-Funk. Y'all, I ain't never heard the term G-Funk before, ever, until this book. So I'm learning something. And I told y'all, you mother hunchies that think y'all know everything, you learn something new every day. I never even heard of G-Funk. What does the G stand for? Is it gangster? Meanwhile, I tried to settle things the only way I knew, which was through music. In 1993, I released a 3-disc set called Sample Some of Disc, Sample Some of Dat. All in all, I have mixed feelings about the way that hip-hop affected P-Funk. It brought P-Funk's music back into the public eye and ear. There's no doubt about that. But it also put a price tag on everything, which means that the people who had a vested interest in ripping me off were back into effect. The new money coming in over hip-hop was like blood in the water for sharks. You mean Nene? And every time I hired a lawyer to look into it, the same lawyer ended up on the other side looking back at me. Okay, so let me say this briefly. You know, this part, we're going to be talking about a lot of the misdoings in regards to the label and the snakes and the serpents that he had crawling around him, right? With that being said, I believe that part of the problem was that they stayed so high during their span in music that they did not pay attention to the small nuances that could protect them. Two of my favorite records from the extended P-Funk family came out during that period. Trelude's Drop the Line and Bernie Worrell's Blacktronic Science. Trelude was my son Tracy Lewis, whose mother was my old writing partner, Vivian Lewis. Because of the legal snarls, things were getting harder, especially on the financial front. There was music everywhere, but at times money got too tight to mention, not just for me, but for everyone around me. Ronnie Ford, who had been my best friend from when we were kids, had come to Detroit to be a barber and ended up working with P-Funk on a number of songs. He wrote Wizard of Finance from the Funkadelic versus the Placebo Syndrome. At some point in the early 90s, Ronnie had decided that he had given too much of his life to drugs and bad living, and he and his wife, Lydia, left Detroit for work in California. Child, oh my God. This is the most disheartening thing about the business. I will never understand how you can make millions and millions of dollars for a company, and then when they done with you, they throw you away and allow things like this to happen. Okay? So like I said, Ronnie and his wife had went to California to get a job. When he got there, that job wasn't there. Next minute, you know, Ronnie and his wife is on the friggin' street. Okay? They are literally homeless. Armin sent out word that he had given me the money to give to Ronnie, which made me look like the bad guy. Even when Ronnie ended up getting a little money out of Armin, maybe $2,000, I advised him not to cash the check. When you cash a check from Armin, you're agreeing to some other shit, like giving up your rights to the song for the rest of your life. Nothing that comes from him comes without strings. The hard times came during a period when lots of the Funkadelic family were in the woods, not just as a result of financial crises, but addiction, disease, or other problems. Some of them never got out of the woods. Eddie Hazel died in 1992. Drinking got him. Drink is the most dangerous. In the final analysis, many of the guys who developed heroin problems kicked it only to go back to the bottle, which is always the end game. Old friends, old problems, old ways, but sometimes new wrinkles in the fabric. In April of 1993, I inducted Sly Stone to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Let me tell you this, right? George Clinton inducted Sly, but him and Sly hadn't talked in a while, because remember, Sly started hearing, voices in his head, and George Clinton was like, ooh, I don't know, I'm fucked up, but I'm not that fucked up. They hadn't talked in years. But the people, let's say the producers of the event felt like that if George was to be there and present him with the award, then Sly Stone would actually come. Now, according to George, when he got there, everybody buzzing around like, is Sly going to come? Is he going to come? For a minute, George Clinton didn't know whether or not that Sly was going to come. Because like I said, he got his issues, right? Everybody there for sound check, looking around, they can't find Sly nowhere. Luckily, Sly was in the back somewhere in the kitchen with his mammy. In fact, the entire family Stone was there. They didn't know if Sly was going to come, because you don't know. As soon as I signed to do the Cinderella Theory with Paisley Park, I knew that I wanted to do a second album with the label too. And the second time around, I wanted more Prince. Now remember, the first time Prince stood back, he allowed George Clinton to do him, okay? Because after all, Prince looked at George Clinton like the ultimate funker. And I understood why. Of all the people who had tried to help save P-Funk along the way, of all the people who had taken it upon themselves to help reupholster us for a new generation, Prince behaved the way I would have behaved. If I had been entrusted with a comeback record by Sly Stone, I wouldn't have interfered. I wouldn't have presumed to know what the fuck he was doing. I would have been very reluctant to tell him what to do. But as we worked on the album, I was thinking that if there was anyone I wanted to have input, it was him. I think that was admirable for Prince to stand down, because to me, if I am a producer / artist trying to help one of my faves to reincarnate himself or themselves or anything like that, then I wouldn't help him if he didn't need my help, because I look up to him. Prince adored that whole P-Funk zhuzh. So how is he to go to them and say, you should do this, you should do that? Answer no. Not when you adore them and you think that they're a genius. Come on. Prince is a genius. Let's not forget that. But it was just a point that I think Prince was being respectful. As luck would have it, Prince was in a strange position with Warner Brothers in 1993. The second Paisley Park record, Hey Man, Smell My Finger, came out at a time when Prince was squarely in the corporate crosshairs. He had started down a dangerous road with his second movie. Under the Cherry Moon, which the company assumed would be a straightforward commercial success like Purple Rain. But Under the Cherry Moon was a black and white romance in the style of old films. Not an autobiographical rock opera with a half hour of killer live footage. Prince further alienated the company by killing off the main character, Christopher. These kinds of unorthodox creative decisions hurt the sales of Parade, the soundtrack for Cherry Moon, even though one of the songs on the album, Kiss, was almost his biggest hit. The British band Well Red, who I had collabed with back in the mid-'80s, sent word to me that another British rock brand, Primal Scream, were big P-Funk fans and wanted to work with me. They came to Detroit and I met Bobby Gillespie, their lead singer and songwriter. I liked their sound. They had absorbed lots of American music the same way that British rockers had back in the 60s. When I was working with them, I was reading the music papers like usual. And I saw an ad for 4 Funkadelic re-releases: Hardcore Jollies, One Nation Under the Groove, Uncle Jam Wants You, and Electric Spanking of War Babies. They were the Warner Brothers albums spanning from 1976 to 1981. But for some reason, they were coming out on Priority Records. Why weren't they still in Warner's vault? I called Nene, who was surprised to hear that I was surprised. He said he had taken control of my masters on my behalf. Really? Really? Now, if you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, and subscribe, because it is so important to our success here on the YouTube. Now, remember this. The same people that you meet on the way up will always be the same people that you meet on the way down. My naysayers, my patron loves. You babies, y'all have a good one. Get vaccinated and be safe.